Saitama threw a punch. In an instant, everyone felt that the sky in front of them shattered. The fierce gust of wind from the punch roared, tearing apart the sea and lifting it up on both sides. Then, it hit that huge cannonball with a Madarog. The cannonball almost instantly turned into fragments from the front, torn apart and devoured. Finally, it turned into nothingness. The 7 warlords of the sea behind him widened their eyes. A punch? Just one punch? One punch destroyed the cannonball with 100-fold amplification? Don't underestimate that originally not so small cannonball. With Valdo's ability to amplify, it became a genuine cannonball. Whether from the inside or outside, the quality and materials were all the same. It truly enlarged the cannonball 100-fold, without any exaggeration. But, under one punch, it was completely shattered. Even after shattering the cannonball, this punch was not finished. The island-like ships, the steel cannons, everything was shattered by that one punch. Valdo, the world destroyer with a bounty of 500 million, didn't even have a chance to cry out before completely dissipating. In an instant, all the strong people around fell silent. Only the waves caused by the gust of wind created by the punch made the sailors on the ships shout, adjusting the direction of the helm to face the impact. Apart from that, there was no sound at all. Jinbei, the fishman pirate, widened his eyes. Hancock opened her small mouth. Mihawk, with his hawk-like eyes, instinctively tightened his grip on the sword hilt. This marine is actually this strong? Just one punch. One punch destroyed Valdo, who was almost as strong as themselves, along with the entire ship. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would definitely think someone was joking with them. No wonder you dropped anchor early, no wonder you don't need to command the 7 warlords of the sea, no wonder you're so calm. The spider ghost subconsciously trembled, only then realizing that he had been trembling for a while. Under such a punch, it was strange not to tremble. The spider ghost stared blankly at Saitama, who was standing on the deck with a dumbfounded expression. In fact, the evaluation of Saitama within the marine was quite polarized. Saitama's strength is indeed not weak, everyone agrees, and he has worked hard to eliminate pirates. But he rose too quickly, joining the marine only a year or two ago and already standing at the same position as someone who has been struggling on the sea for over a decade. Even the spider ghost himself occasionally had some thoughts about this, it's human nature. But the spider ghost knew that Saitama became a vice admiral by fighting for it, it was what he deserved, so on ordinary days, he also acknowledged Saitama. However, when Saitama defied orders during the subjugation of Uchiha Madara, many people within the marine began to resist him. As a marine, why not fight? If you defy orders, can you still be considered a marine? The spider ghost also had this thought, and he even had some complaints about assisting Saitama when Sengoku the fleet admiral ordered him to. In terms of military merit, I'm not weak either. In terms of seniority, I'm 100 times stronger than Saitama. Why am I being asked to assist him? Now the spider ghost understood why. He also understood why Sengoku, despite Saitama's significant defiance, only lightly reprimanded him without stripping him of his vice admiral title. Because he is strong. This power is so strong, it is enough to hold the future hopes of Marine. After I go back, I must strongly condemn those who gossip. Ghost Spider secretly thought to himself, if they really push away such a strong person who is dedicated to justice, it would be a loss for the forces of world justice. Thinking this, he seemed to feel a sense of mission. Toshigi secretly glanced at Ghost Spider, the vice admiral, and secretly laughed to herself. She could see the changes in Ghost Spider's expression, and as a marine, she naturally knew some of the idle talk at naval headquarters. But it doesn't matter. Vice Admiral Saitama may not socialize with others or oppose them, but he will continue to attract strong individuals like Vice Admiral Ghost Spider to gather around him. Because Vice Admiral Saitama is very strong. On the other side, among the Shichibukai, so strong. Including the unruly Doflamingo, they all fell silent. Is this level of strength against the rules? They are all pirates, and as pirates, they are naturally opposed to the Marines. This is not something that the title of 7 Warlords of the Sea can resolve. Moreover, there are quite a few individuals with ulterior motives among them. But in the face of such a strong individual, what use is having ulterior motives? Doflamingo suddenly noticed the indifferent Gilgamesh drinking wine behind him. After a moment of silence, he spoke up. My king, how do you see this battle? What is there to see? Gilgamesh yawned leisurely and elegantly. From the very beginning, I haven't been paying attention. Although the Shichibukai are all mixed breeds, they are still renowned heroes. I never expected that we would fall to the point of needing to unite to deal with something like this. It's truly lamentable. Don't you think so, Doflamingo? Doflamingo's mouth twitched. That's not what I wanted to ask. Besides, Maybe we can handle Berndivaldo ourselves, but who would fight desperately for the sake of the Marines? His mouth twitched, and Doflamingo straightforwardly said, King, I'm talking about that person named Saitama. What do you think of him? Much stronger than you, a mixed breed. Gilgamesh calmly said, with a smile on his face, as if he didn't care at all. Your power is nothing more than insignificant in front of him. And what about you? Doflamingo squinted his eyes and probed. What do you want to say? Gilgamesh looked at him with a smile that seemed like a smile. Nothing. Doflamingo smirked. I just feel that the abilities you've shown seem to be a bit inferior to this Marine Vice Admiral. He didn't say the last part of the sentence, but the meaning in his words was very clear. For a moment, the powerful pirates around Gilgamesh were somewhat moved. To be honest, this group of people gathered here, firstly because Gilgamesh had a charismatic personality, and everyone believed that he would achieve great things in the future. Secondly, it was because Gilgamesh was very strong. Strong enough to possibly take the position of one of the 4 emperors with them. Otherwise, how could this group of powerful individuals willingly submit to others? So, you're just a mixed breed, and you can never become a king. Gilgamesh chuckled lightly, disdainfully saying, the so-called king is quite reserved. When I start to seriously deal with you mixed breeds, it means I have already been defeated. The 7 warlords of the sea, in the end, left with mixed feelings. At the same time, they also carried a doubt. With such strong power, couldn't he solve it himself? Why did he call us to come? That's a good question. Tashigi and the others also wanted to ask, and Sengoku probably wanted to ask himself why he had called the 7 warlords of the sea to come. Wouldn't it be better to leave the opportunity for them to go and fight Uchiha Madara together? But no matter what, the problem has been resolved. The powerful world destroyer Berndivaldo, with a bounty of 500 million, died, and his subordinates were also killed together. Vice Admiral Tashigi hurriedly reported to Naval Headquarters, and then was met with the long silence of Fleet Admiral Sengoku. Finally, Sengoku made a decision. Order Vice Admiral Saitama to return to Naval Headquarters. His Vice Admiral promotion ceremony should also be made up. With these words, although Saitama became a Marine Vice Admiral, he had never been to Marineford. He began his journey back. Saitama also had no objections, but Tashigi felt a bit regretful. After returning to Naval Headquarters, it is estimated that the acting captain, who had been absent for a long time, should also take over. It was time for her, as the temporary first mate, to hand over her work. There was no way. Although Tashigi worked hard, constantly striving to reduce the frequency of mistakes. But she was only 12 or 13 years old, not much older than Baby 5, Saitama's personal maid. Naturally, she lacked experience. If it weren't for Saitama taking care of all the battles, they would only need to do auxiliary work and guard the prison, and they would have made frequent mistakes long ago. In fact, there have been many jokes, but under Saitama's fist, they were unharmed. Indeed, I still feel a bit reluctant. Tashigi pouted her small mouth. The place where everyone fought was not far from Naval Headquarters to begin with. Berndivaldo originally wanted to attack Naval Headquarters and Mariajoy. Saitama was not in a hurry and leisurely moved forward, capturing several pirates along the way. This made Vice Admiral Tashigi secretly nod. Indeed, Vice Admiral Saitama, no matter when, never forgets to punish evil. It can only be said that when someone has determined that he is good, everything he does is good. If he hadn't just demonstrated his power, it is estimated that in Vice Admiral Tashigi's mind, it would have changed to, doesn't even have the appearance of a marine, called for a headquarters meeting, and still went to catch pirates so slowly? Even though Saitama captured many pirates along the way, they quickly arrived at Naval Headquarters. Naval Headquarters is close to the crescent-shaped pier, near the shore, allowing returning Marines to quickly reach the headquarters. Saitama naturally did the same. When he got off the ship, he immediately saw Sengoku, Garp, and Zephyr standing on the shore, waiting for him. The ceremonial guard of the Marines stood neatly beside them. Tashigi was suddenly excited. Fleet Admiral Sengoku, Hero Garp, Instructor Zephyr. Such important figures actually came to the shore to welcome Vice Admiral Saitama? Zephyr smiled and looked at Sengoku. Sengoku had already removed the Madarages from his hands, probably because he didn't dare to show weakness as the Fleet Admiral in front of so many Marines. He showed a gentle smile, but occasionally pulled at his arm, causing his mouth to twitch. Sengoku's face turned serious, and he shouted, "Salute to Vice Admiral Saitama, who fought hard." Brush. Brush brush. Countless elite soldiers saluted Saitama in the center with the most neat military posture. Even Tashigi, who was usually careless, subconsciously straightened her body in the solemn atmosphere. Not to mention others, they all straightened their bodies completely, as if they were a straight line. Only Saitama. No need to exaggerate like this, Saitama said calmly, his voice still sounding like he hadn't eaten enough. Sengoku couldn't help but laugh and cry. He had never seen a man like Saitama before. Those who had received marine salutes, whether it was the fierce Akainu, the careless Kizaru, or the lazy Aokiji, all straightened their bodies and accepted everyone's salute with the most heroic posture in this situation. But Saitama. Shaking his head, Sengoku said softly, "This is what you deserve." With his own strength, he defeated the world destroyer, Waldo. How inspiring. After Marine's previous failed expedition against Uchiha Madara, the entire Marine was shrouded in shadow, even more disheartened than the first failed expedition against Uchiha Madara. At this time, heroes were needed to boost Marine's morale. Saitama was such a hero. Kizaru looked at Saitama in front of him, squinting his eyes. I hope some people can open their eyes a bit and not go too far. Saitama's promotion ceremony as Vice Admiral would be held later, and during this time, he would stay at Naval Headquarters with Toshigi and others. Toshigi and the others would also receive generous rewards. Promotions and rewards were given accordingly. Of course, unlike Saitama, who needed a ceremony, their promotions were simpler and normal. During this period, Sengoku didn't want Saitama to go out. Naval Headquarters was fine, but Mariajoy above and Sabodi Archipelago nearby often had celestial dragons appearing. If they were to have a dispute, it would be difficult to handle. So Saitama leisurely ate and drank at Naval Headquarters. It must be said that although Naval Headquarters was like a military camp, the food there was very good. Fine wine, high-quality meat, rich dishes, and skilled chefs. Saitama didn't hold back and immediately started eating and drinking. Then he asked the marine chef to specially make him a type of food, French fries. Thank you. Saitama smiled with his standard expression of a salted fish. I like long French fries. Yes, Vice Admiral Saitama. No need to be so serious, I just wanted to eat some French fries. This strange conversation happened many times in the high-class cafeteria of Marine. But this time, click, click, click. The crisp sound of high heels echoed. Saitama looked up at the sound and saw a tall woman with a cool pale pink center-parted long hair staring at him. Are you Saitama? My future superior? Hina, very dissatisfied. Hina, very dissatisfied. Hina snorted lightly, a hint of dissatisfaction flashing in her eyes. She was truly very dissatisfied. Although Hina is not yet the future Vice Admiral, she already holds the rank of Lieutenant Commander as Zephyr's disciple. At her young age of 23, her future is limitless. Not everyone can enter the Marines and become a Rear Admiral with formidable strength like Saitama. As a Lieutenant Commander, Hina has the ability and qualifications to command a warship even at Naval Headquarters. But why should she serve as someone else's vice officer when she can be in charge herself? And it's for this guy who doesn't follow military orders. Hina cursed inwardly, her expression unpleasant. Not following military orders is a grave mistake in the strict hierarchy of the military organization. Even if you can prove you were right in the future, this mistake is enough to nullify all achievements. Such a person can be said to be unworthy of being a soldier. However, Saitama just looked at her with a dumb and silly expression. Who are you? Hina's eye twitched. Hina, Naval Headquarters Lieutenant Commander, soon to be your vice officer. Vice officer. Saitama paused for a moment, then suddenly realized and clapped his hands. Oh, that thing the old man was talking about. Then I'll be relying on you in the future, ha ha, ha ha ha. Seeing that silly and dumb face smiling, Hina's eye twitched in anger. Doesn't this guy understand that she is expressing her dissatisfaction? In fact, it's not just Hina, many people in the Marines are quite dissatisfied with Saitama. His rapid promotion has easily aroused the hostility of others. For example, Hina, who trained hard in the Marine training camp, constantly participated in battles, but at this moment, she is only a lieutenant commander. Meanwhile, Saitama has already reached the highest position below Admiral, Vice Admiral. Of course, if it were just that, it wouldn't make others so jealous. After all, Saitama's promotion was well-deserved, and coupled with the publicity of the Marine supernova, it was somewhat acceptable. But with his defiance of orders, all of this has become completely meaningless. As a Marine, being excited. How dare you, on what grounds? The failure of this expedition against Uchiha Madara was too great. Almost all of the world government's people were wiped out. Tens of thousands of elite Marines did not return. Admiral Akainu was severely injured and captured. Only Sengoku and Garp managed to escape with injuries. Saitama is very strong. If you're so strong, why didn't you join the battle? If you had participated, would the Marines have suffered such great losses? This resentment fills the hearts of all Marines. Since Roger's death, The Marines have never suffered such a big loss. They have directed all their resentment toward Saitama, using him as their outlet. I don't want to be your subordinate. Hina coldly snorted. As a Marine who can't even follow orders, you're not worthy of my loyalty. In reality, it is a very proud achievement to become the Vice Admiral's vice officer with the rank of Lieutenant Commander. Because usually, the Vice Admiral's vice officer must be at least a Commodore or Captain, not just a Rear Admiral. Hina knew very well that her identity as a Zephyr disciple gave her a significant advantage, which is why she was arranged by Sengoku to be Saitama's deputy. If nothing unexpected happened, she would immediately be promoted as Saitama carried out a few missions. She definitely rose through the ranks much faster than Smoker, who was at the same level. I don't want to serve under someone who can't even be called a soldier, Hina said coldly, taking a deep breath. Then, she lit a cigarette. Serve under me? Saitama looked at Hina with a dumbfounded expression, hesitated for a moment, and said, although you're pretty, I don't like girls who smoke, so. Get lost. Hina was so angry that she almost swallowed the cigarette. What I meant was that I don't want to be your subordinate. Subordinate. Saitama tilted his head. I don't have any subordinates. How can a hero have subordinates? Huh? Hina sneered, her eyes filled with disdain. As a Marine, you don't even have superiors and subordinates. How can you carry out missions? How can you allocate combat assignments? You're not worthy of being a soldier. With that, she snorted and walked away with big strides. Saitama watched her figure and rubbed his chin. Then. Oh, the fries are here, thank you. For the next few days, Saitama stayed at the naval headquarters. Saitama was a lazy person by nature, and if there were no news about the marine monsters, he could stay at home all the time. Sengoku and the others also breathed a sigh of relief. It's good to have a lazy person, it's good to have a lazy person. With a lazy person, there's no need to go to places like Sabodi Archipelago and see the celestial dragons. For this reason, Sengoku even specifically ordered a raise for the chef responsible for making fries for Saitama and continued to hint at the operational directive of keeping Saitama in the cafeteria. As for Hina, she hadn't appeared since that day. I don't know if she's applying for a transfer from her teacher Zephyr and Sengoku to be transferred from Saitama's deputy. On the other hand, Toshigi came over after a few days, bouncing happily in front of Saitama with a face full of joy. It seems that she has been showing off her newly promoted lieutenant rank for the past few days. And so, a few days passed. It's about time. Saitama, lying in his room, suddenly flashed a completely different light in his eyes. Zhao Shu's eyes flashed with the unique purple ripples of the Rinnegan, and he formed hand seals. With my current abilities, the power I can unleash should be much stronger. Tengai Shinsei. Powerful chakra erupted in the room but was perfectly controlled within the room, without leaking outside. Very good. Zhao Shu smiled and quickly returned to Saitama's usual silly expression. Buzz. 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 The alarm of the Marines suddenly sounded, accompanied by a slightly panicked broadcast. Alarm. Alarm. A giant meteorite has appeared above the naval headquarters. Everyone, evacuate immediately. Brothers and sisters, I'm back. Damn it, let's continue to curse him. Damn, what is that? A meteorite. Why would a meteorite appear here? Quick. Quick, escape. Escape. Naval headquarters was filled with fear. A meteorite, as big as an island, was actually crashing towards naval headquarters? What's going on? Of course, it was done by Zhao Shu. Tengai Shinsei, a technique that can only be used by the holder of the Rinnegan, summoned huge meteorites to fall vertically from the sky. Of course, with the power of Uchiha Madara that Zhao Shu already possessed, Tengai Shinsei became even more massive. Almost indistinguishable from an island, with such meteorites falling, who could survive? A desperate situation. Could it be that the heavens want to destroy naval headquarters? Sengoku looked at the huge meteorite that seemed to cover the sky, his face full of despair. During this period, naval headquarters led by Sengoku can be said to have been losing everywhere. Being continuously educated by Uchiha Madara, the most miserable time was when even Admiral Akainu became a captive. Impel Down was breached again, the gates of justice were shattered, and they still haven't finished rebuilding. As for the Shichibukai, let's not even mention it. Although the Shichibukai stabilized the Grand Line's order and brought benefits to the world government and the Marines, bowing down to pirates was a complete disgrace to this fleet admiral. A series of failures. If it weren't for Sengoku's own strong will, he would have long been doubting his life after being struck so many times. However, now looking at this huge meteorite, even he couldn't help but feel a sense of despair. Sengoku, I have already ordered the soldiers to evacuate urgently, we should. Suru said in a low voice. Sengoku smiled bitterly and shook his head. In such a hurry, How many people can escape? With the strength of Sengoku and the others, it wouldn't be difficult to escape from under the meteorite and withstand the shockwaves caused by its impact. But for ordinary soldiers, it would be certain death. Even for ordinary officers, it would be a slim chance of survival. Sengoku raised his head, looked at the sky, at the increasingly close giant meteorite, and then, "I won't give up." He gritted his teeth, his expression no longer calm like a Buddha, but rather madly said such words. Then, without hesitation, he took big strides and ran to the top of naval headquarters. Sengoku. Garp was also here at this time, his face serious. What should we do? Although they hadn't experienced meteorites much and couldn't calculate the destructive power of the falling meteorite like scientists, as strong individuals, they had their own estimation of the destructive power of such things. No matter how you think about it, there would be less than 100 people who could escape from naval headquarters. And that's including those who could escape in time from the outer circle, including themselves as strong individuals. Find a way. Sengoku's eyes turned red as he looked at the Marines frantically fleeing from the main entrance. He gritted his teeth. I refuse to believe that naval headquarters will be destroyed here. Attack. Let's attack that meteorite together. All right. Admiral Kizaru, who was beside him, no longer had a relaxed and lazy expression. Upon hearing Sengoku's words, he immediately extended his hand without hesitation. Laser. Whoosh. A laser shot out fiercely and landed on the still relatively distant meteorite. Meteor. Not a single trace of movement. Kizaru's mouth twitched. He was fast, but compared to the three admirals, his destructive power was slightly weaker. Especially when compared to Akainu, who had the strongest destructive power. If Akainu were here, Kizaru's mind briefly entertained this thought, but quickly dismissed it. Akainu had already been captured by the Uchiha team and was now a prisoner. Besides, even if Akainu were here, would there be any solution? This kind of meteorite was no longer just a small problem of eliminating the naval headquarters, even the surrounding cities. No one knew if the Red Line, not far from the naval headquarters, would be destroyed by it. As for Mariajoy, where the celestial dragons resided, perhaps it would also be annihilated. Looking at the huge meteorite in the sky, everyone could faintly see it friction with the atmosphere, turning its surface red. Many strong individuals refused to be outdone and displayed their ultimate moves. Aokiji gathered cold air in his right arm and released an ice bird, the blizzard beak, which had a powerful impact and froze everything in its path. Garp took out the accumulated explosive rocks from the naval headquarters, held them in his hand, and threw them like projectiles. Sengoku transformed into a giant Buddha and continuously unleashed shockwaves. Suru hesitated for a moment, sighed, and consciously went down to oversee the retreat of the Marines. Her ability had extremely weak destructive power and was almost useless in this situation. It was better to go down and guide the surrounding ships to take in Marine soldiers and then escape from here. On the open sea, the impact of the meteorite should be much weaker, perhaps saving a few more people. As for the situation here, even if we can't slow down the speed at which the meteorite falls, how can we possibly destroy it? At this moment, the naval headquarters had turned into chaos. The vice admirals had an unpleasant expression and were hesitant. The lower-ranking soldiers were like ants on a hot pan, frantically fleeing. Even though they usually had excellent discipline and were elite soldiers, they couldn't maintain order at this time. Toshiji's face was panicked as she went against the flow of people and ran towards the dormitory of the headquarters. Vice Admiral Saitama hasn't come out yet. Why? What is he doing? Why isn't he escaping? Saitama's appearance was unique among the Marines. If Saitama had followed the crowd, she wouldn't have missed him. Toshigi gritted her teeth and rushed through the crowd, even enduring constant scolding and cursing. Finally, she arrived at the door of Saitama's dormitory. Madarog. Without hesitation, she kicked open the door, and then. Toshigi blinked her eyes, looking bewildered. Vice Admiral Saitama, what are you doing? Putting on clothes. Saitama looked at her expressionlessly, halfway dressed, revealing his underwear and partially visible skin. Vice Admiral Saitama, don't you know that a meteorite is about to fall? I know, that's why I'm putting on clothes, Saitama said matter-of-factly. Otherwise, how can I go out and meet people? Toshigi. You make a valid point. I'm speechless. How can you go out without wearing clothes? Right. Of course, not right. Now is not the time to worry about this. Saitama Vice Admiral, the situation is very critical now. Don't worry about whether or not to wear clothes. The meteorite is about to fall. Toshigi said in a frantic tone, actually, there are many people who haven't dressed properly, and they don't care. Why do you care about this? This is evacuation. It's fleeing. How can you expect to tidy up and leisurely set off like going on a trip? Saitama calmly said, anyway, there's still about a minute until the meteorite completely falls. That's enough time for me to get dressed. Toshigi was dumbfounded. Yes, there seems to be about a minute until the meteorite completely falls. But even if you get dressed within a minute, then what? How are you going to run? Saitama Vice Admiral. Toshigi was already going crazy. With your current state, how can you possibly have time to run? I'm not running. Huh? Toshigi was stunned, but she saw that Saitama had already calmly put on his clothes and walked over with big strides, casually saying, I never intended to run. Meanwhile, at the highest point of the naval headquarters, Sengoku's face could almost be described as ferocious, and more people were gathering around him. Not all Marines were willing to flee upon hearing the news. Some vice admirals and lower-ranking officers with a sense of justice climbed to the highest point of the naval headquarters and used their abilities to launch attacks at the huge meteorite. Logia users attacked with elemental powers, Paramecia users used their peculiar abilities, and some even carried cannons and fired at the meteorite. Alright, you all should leave quickly. Sengoku's face was ferocious. While he was launching attacks at the meteorite, not knowing if he could even touch the shockwave, he cursed, Didn't you hear the order to retreat? Obey the order. But many vice admirals had an unpleasant expression, their eyes on the verge of madness. In this situation, how can we possibly leave? In reality, they didn't want to leave either. The naval headquarters was the stronghold of justice in the hearts of countless Marines. If this place was destroyed, it would be a great pain for all the righteous people in the world. Sengoku didn't want to leave, the vice admirals didn't want to leave, and there were too many lower-ranking officers who didn't want to leave. In fact, if it weren't for the retreat signal and the crisis at hand, causing some people to lose their judgment and instinctively obey orders, there would probably be even more people standing here at this moment. Hina was also standing here, pulling out her gun and continuously firing at the meteorite. But the significance of this gun was almost non-existent. The meteorite continued to fall as usual, unaffected by Kizaru's laser, the Vice Admiral's cannons, or Hina's rifle. It just kept falling, slowly accelerating, and getting bigger in people's sight. What use are you all here? Sengoku punched, sending out shockwaves, and cursed, we still have a chance to survive, what about you? Sengoku's words were indeed true. The Vice Admirals were still somewhat capable, but what about the lower-ranking officers? Are they going to carry cannons and fire? Similarly, these weak soldiers who continued to stay here also had a high possibility of death. As for Logia users, they were fine. After all, they could transform into elements, and the falling meteorite was a physical impact. As long as they weren't blown into the sea, their chances of survival were still high. However, the response to Sengoku was a series of stubborn faces. Sengoku, Garp, Zephyr. These older generation powerhouses have devoted their entire lives to marine. Although they did not end the era of the great age of navigation, they have trained a group of tenacious individuals. Sengoku gritted his teeth, holding back tears in his eyes, and shouted loudly. Good. Then let's go together. Anyway, it's a bit late to escape now. Finally, the people showed smiles, followed by wave after wave of attacks, ruthlessly bombarding the sky. Although the frequency of attacks is still chaotic, they seem to be more intense. Sengoku looked at the meteorite that was already faintly visible, indicating the uneven craters, and a touch of despair flashed in his eyes. In the end, is it useless? This is already a natural disaster. He took a deep breath and glanced at the soldiers still fleeing below. Although many people have already escaped, there is not enough time to evacuate everyone. Is it useful to evacuate? Can we really be safe by leaving a certain distance from the impact of these falling meteorites? This thought circled in Sengoku's mind, but there was no answer. Or rather, he dared not give a true answer. The people also smiled bitterly, collapsed on the ground, and gave up the attack. What's the use of attacking? Suddenly, clatter, clatter. Calm and steady footsteps sounded. At the same time, there were faint female voices mixed in, such as, Saitama Vice Admiral, you can't go. And, Saitama Vice Admiral, don't go any further, let's hurry and leave. The people subconsciously turned their heads and looked over. It's you. Hina widened her eyes. Red boots under her feet, a yellow tight-fitting suit, and a peculiar cape draped over her body. Saitama. Oh, and dragging Saitama along, the leg hanging, Toshigi who was trying to persuade him to escape. Oh, you're here too. Saitama showed his signature smile. Saitama, he came too. Sengoku breathed a sigh of relief, a touch of gratification flashed in his eyes. In this crisis, facing such a critical situation, being able to come, daring to come, it means the righteousness in his heart. Zephyr, you didn't make a mistake in the end. Saitama is also a man with a sense of justice. Just as Sengoku was feeling emotional, Saitama suddenly spoke not far away, Can you help me take care of Toshigi? Hina looked confused. The person Saitama was referring to was her. But, can't you remember my name? Who do you think you are? I haven't officially become your subordinate yet. Why should I listen to you? Hina snorted coldly, but the hostility in her eyes towards Saitama diminished a lot. Although he disobeys orders and lacks respect, he seems to be a good comrade. Saitama's pace remained unchanged, taking big strides forward. I am someone who acts as a hero, and then, suddenly leapt. It's Saitama. Everyone looked at that strange figure and naturally recognized his presence. Marine supernova, the insubordinate, the hero. Originally, in this place where many marine elites gathered, when they couldn't see his figure, some people were a bit dissatisfied and criticized, feeling that this supernova was not living up to his name. But now, he has also arrived, however. What's the use of him coming? It's just one more person to die. The vice admirals shook their heads silently. But the fact that he came was enough to make many people treat him differently. The next second, Saitama's body slightly contracted, and then, like a spring, he suddenly leapt. Crack. The sturdy naval headquarters building, strong enough to withstand cannonballs, instantly cracked under his push. As if it had been hit by a cannonball, Madarog. Saitama, like an arrow leaving the bow, rushed straight towards the meteorite. A hurricane rose, blowing Toshiji's hair all over the place. Saitama, Vice Admiral, Saitama, Sengoku, Garp, Aokiji. Everyone raised their heads and looked at the man who soared into the sky like a cannonball. Saitama clenched his fist with one hand, and the red boxing glove made a creaking sound as he gripped it. Don't fall behind. The meteorite, glowing red from atmospheric friction, fell with a loud crash and collided fiercely with that fist. The next second, boom, a huge explosion sounded. The flames on the meteorite, as if blown away by the fist wind, spread out with a Madarog, forming expanding circles. Crack. Crack. The sound of countless rocks shattering echoed. Madarog. If everyone were to look from above the meteorite at this moment, they would see a figure forcefully rushing out from the center of the meteorite. Saitama pierced through the meteorite, my city. The next second, the meteorite, even larger than naval headquarters, shattered with a loud crash. The meteorite, comparable to an island, broke into countless small stones and scattered in all directions. Like a brilliant meteor shower, it shattered. The people on the upper floors of naval headquarters widened their eyes in astonishment. Shattered. The huge meteorite, which not even an admiral-level attack could damage. Shattered. Unbelievable. Sengoku stared blankly, but then suddenly reacted when he saw the small meteorite scattering. Aokiji. I know. Admiral Aokiji took a deep breath, and an extremely cold wave of air emanated from him. Ice Age. Cold air was released and condensed in the sky, instantly forming an immensely huge ice wall. The next second, boom, 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 boom. Shattered small meteorites came crashing down, smashing into the ice wall. Aokiji's face turned red, and the ice wall crackled, making a series of sounds that indicated it was under immense pressure. But in the end, he gritted his teeth and withstood the attacks of the shattered meteorites. The heavy impact of the meteorites lasted for a full 30 seconds, which felt like 3 years of hardship for Aokiji. These are just shattered meteorites. If they were intact. Aokiji's mouth twitched, and he let out a long sigh. One intact meteorite was completely different from hundreds of thousands of shattered small stones. The former could destroy an entire area, while the latter could at most completely destroy the place where they fell. At the same time, the pressure was also completely different. On the other side, Saitama also descended from the sky and stood on the ice wall. Well, problem solved. The crisis of the naval headquarters being destroyed is resolved. This great news instantly spread throughout the entire marine, bringing tears of joy to everyone. Especially the soldiers who had not yet escaped from the naval headquarters, they knelt down and cheered. We don't have to die. Not to mention not dying, no one died at all. Saitama's strike greatly reduced the force of the meteorites' impact, breaking them into countless small meteorites. And with Aokiji Admiral's help, they created a solid ice defense shield that covered the entire naval headquarters. It can be said that the crisis has been greatly reduced. And the biggest hero among them is Saitama. Salute to Vice Admiral Saitama. At Saitama's promotion ceremony held by the Marine, led by Sengoku, they loudly proclaimed. Swish. 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 Below, all the Marines saluted in unison, their eyes filled with respect. All the Marines who saved the naval headquarters, who saved the symbol of justice in the world, and who saved the recent decline of the Marine, they all deserve this bow. Looking at everyone's respectful expressions, Saitama's face turned slightly red. If it weren't for his performance during this period of time, Zhao Shu would have made some mistakes. That meteorite was also created by Zhao Shu. But even Hina, who was usually arrogant, had to bow and apologize to herself afterwards, admitting that her previous hostility toward Saitama was wrong. Zhao Shu felt that he had done well. Well, after this incident at the naval headquarters, morale soared, washing away the shadow cast by Uchiha Madara. Saitama has become a hero of the marine, a spokesperson for justice. And unlike before, where there were always people who criticized him, this time it was the entire marine, plus the recognized hero of the world government. If it weren't for Sengoku's concern that Saitama would cause trouble if he saw the celestial dragon's behavior, the high-ranking officials of the world government would personally reward him now. Even now, Saitama eats in the cafeteria at the naval headquarters, and the chef always gives him twice as many fries, allowing him to enjoy his meal. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that the marine still had 3 admirals and Akainu was only captured and not killed, this achievement alone would be enough to make Saitama become an admiral. However, Sengoku and others considered that it was still too short a time for Saitama to join the marine, and he had just been promoted to vice admiral, so they suppressed the idea. But privately, many people already believed that Saitama would inevitably become an admiral, and even a fleet admiral. These were just a matter of time, and a relatively short time at that. Because whether it's vice admiral or fleet admiral, the biggest difference is the level of responsibility. When the enemy comes, the lower ranks can escape, but the fleet admiral must face the difficulties head-on, even if it means death. But Vice Admiral Saitama, actually, these things don't really make a difference to you, right? Toshigi smiled, holding her famous sword Shigur. Of course, Saitama had a nonchalant expression that said matter-of-factly, if the hero runs away, then who will fight? Saitama didn't stay at the naval headquarters for too long after all. Perhaps Sengoku was worried that Saitama would accidentally encounter the celestial dragons and cause some disputes he didn't want, or maybe Saitama had stayed long enough as the vice admiral promotion ceremony had already taken place and his subordinates had been assigned. In any case, Saitama set sail again with new orders. But this time, the order was to negotiate with Uchiha Madara and return the prisoners. Saitama said in a dazed and cute manner. Yes, Sengoku nodded and glanced at Saitama. Don't you know, Akainu Admiral? After a moment of silence, he ultimately didn't say those words. Akainu Admiral had been captured by Uchiha Madara. This was an indelible shame for the Marines, but there was nothing they could do. Although the Marines were not afraid of sacrifice, they had a long history of not caring about the consequences. The strength of an admiral level was not something that could be easily adoned, let alone the fact that neither the naval headquarters nor the world government could organize another team to attack Uchiha Madara in a short period of time. There were hardly any warlords willing to help. The previous world destroyer Brandi Valdo incident had given them enough excuses. And without the warlords, it was extremely difficult for the Marines alone to besiege such a powerful opponent as Uchiha Madara. I want you to go and help bring back Akainu Admiral, Sengoku said in a low voice, sighing. The world's forces of justice are dwindling, and we can't afford to lose Akainu. A reasonable reason. After all, Saitama was one of the few in the Marines who hadn't fought against Uchiha Madara. Again, you want me to go and negotiate, Saitama said, his mouth twitching. Sengoku, your tricky operations just keep coming one after another. Although Sengoku's reasons were very normal and flawless, how am I supposed to handle this kind of work? I'm just an actor who has been practicing for a year and a half, skilled in pretending, deceiving, performing, and being cunning. Alright, I understand, I'll go right away, Saitama sighed softly. The Marines' technology had always been quite good, and they had developed a non-mass-produced version of the Seastone ship, which was specifically assigned to Saitama. As a Marine Vice Admiral, he was entitled to such a high-quality ship. At the same time, although he couldn't be promoted to Admiral because the quota was full, he had no problem receiving such a ship. This high-quality ship not only meant the ability to traverse the calm belt with Seastone, but also represented more firepower, larger tonnage, and faster speed. As soon as Toshigi boarded the ship, she couldn't contain her excitement. This ship was much better than the previous one. It was big and spacious. Even the soldiers' dormitories were much larger. On the other hand, Hina's expression was calm as she took over Toshigi's duties as the vice captain and calmly commanded the soldiers to operate the ship, steadily moving forward. As Zephyr's disciple, although Hina's position was not high, her knowledge as a marine was quite extensive. Arranging soldiers and organizing navigation were her basic abilities. Well, it should have been Saitama's responsibility as the commanding officer, but looking at Saitama's dumbfounded face as he looked at the scenery by the sea, Hina's mouth twitched, and she lightly hummed, going a bit overboard. HMPH, although you have the most basic sense of justice as a marine and your strength is quite good, you are completely unfit to be an officer. And there's the insubordination. HMPH. Although Hina apologized to Saitama after the meteorite incident, her apology was only for her attitude, not because she thought her initial accusation was wrong. As a Marine, insubordination was not allowed under any circumstances. Wait, hold on, it seems like I also disobeyed orders that day when the meteorite fell. Hina's face was filled with a conflicted expression. East Blue, Goa Kingdom. Actually, it can no longer be called the Kingdom of Goa, because the king and nobles have completely disappeared. But whether it's the residents here or the people of other countries, they are not used to changing their names for the time being. In addition, the Revolutionary Army is busy and doesn't bother to change the name of the country, so they continue to call it that for now. Did Marine attack again today? Robin walked lightly and approached Uchiha Madara. No, Uchiha Madara calmly replied, we haven't been attacked today. Although Marine, including Sengoku, was repelled by Uchiha Madara, it doesn't mean that Marine has been inactive. In fact, they have always been active. Their action is the warships. After Uchiha Madara repelled Sengoku and others, although they retreated to the naval headquarters, the blockade that once surrounded the entire kingdom of Goa was not lifted. Instead, it continued to surround the entire island. Of course, the blockade was extensive, even utilizing some nearby reefs and marine bases. Marine warships have always been patrolling, attempting to block the surrounding waters. Even the Revolutionary Army's ships can only sneak onto the island under the cover of darkness. Marine not only maintains the blockade, but occasionally one or two ships come towards the Kingdom of Goa, approaching and directly firing, as if it were a buster call. At most, there were 5 warships that came directly, not aiming, and fired near the maximum range. Fortunately, Uchiha Madara's clones are distributed along all the coastlines, and whenever Marine approaches, he chooses to counterattack without hesitation. Marine has suffered losses, but they persist in harassing, making people annoyed. At the beginning, Robin was worried and even thought of the buster call she experienced in her childhood, fearing that Marine would bomb the entire Kingdom of Goa. Well, she got used to it. Marine still hasn't come. Robin muttered to herself in surprise. This is strange. Could it be that Marine is afraid to move forward because of the sacrifices? But soon, she shook her head. Marine has sacrificed a lot, but this kind of sacrifice of warships and ordinary soldiers is not something that the wealthy Marine cares about. They can easily pull out hundreds of warships and even more. With the world government, they can easily be replenished. Robin even considered whether Marine intended to use these sacrifices to exhaust the only person they feared, Uchiha Madara. Is everything okay with the civilians? Uchiha Madara calmly asked. No, Robin shrugged. Under our coordination, the supply of various goods is still sufficient, and the revolutionary ships that smuggle in are enough to meet the needs of the people for a short time. But there may be some trouble in the future. I don't know when this Marine blockade will be broken. Uchiha Madara nodded. He is only responsible for the battle, while the other matters are all entrusted to the revolutionary officers led by Nico Robin. They do have some abilities. As far as he can observe, the living standards of the people have greatly improved, and there are more smiles, even under the current blockade. Speaking of the blockade, Uchiha Madara squinted his eyes and looked into the distance. In fact, the Marine blockade can be broken, and Uchiha Madara has this ability. But after discussing with Dragon and others, they unanimously decided not to break through the Marine blockade for the time being. The world government is not powerless. The 5 elders have not made a move yet, but no one believes they are incapable. The goal of the revolution is grand, but the road is rough. It is not a good thing to take too much risk without sufficient strength. Slowly boiling the frog in warm water is the simplest way. First, turn the Kingdom of Goa into the most reliable base for the revolution, and then slowly develop and infiltrate. It seems that Marine won't come today. Robin observed the coast and came to a conclusion. But shortly after she reached this conclusion, she suddenly saw a ship appearing in the distance. Huh? Marine? Robin was stunned. Uchiha Madara was also stunned and added in his heart. Is the main body here? Marine? Robin squinted her eyes, a hint of seriousness flashing in her eyes. And judging by that warship, is it Saitama? Saitama. Uchiha Madara glanced sideways. Yes, a vice admiral, Robin nodded, then continued, but don't underestimate this vice admiral. His strength is definitely not inferior to an admiral. He's only a vice admiral because of his limited experience. Robin's expression turned serious. Why did the Marines send him here? What conspiracy is there? Madara, you must be careful. Uchiha Madara. Understood. After all, it's troublesome to act alongside my true self. Saitama's warship slowly approached, not firing directly like other warships usually do. Therefore, Uchiha Madara and Robin did not take the initiative to attack, but quietly watched the ship dock, and a bald man with a blank expression walked down from it. "Hey, you guys are here. Saitama?" Robin spoke up. "Yes, it's me." Saitama smiled and said to the person beside him, Toshigi, I didn't expect my reputation to reach here." Toshigi. "Well, our superior is good in every aspect, strong, and doesn't have an attitude. But this uncoordinated appearance is a bit damaging to the dignity of the Marines. So why is it that even though Saitama's reputation is not small, most pirates are punched to death for provoking him? Because they can't sense haki from Saitama. Not the haki ability unique to pirates, but a domineering aura. Nico Robin, the Revolutionary Army, the offspring of demons, is indeed a cancer in society. I knew you would shelter this group of heinous criminals." Hina coldly snorted, her face showing displeasure. "After all, it's a government that even scares an 8 or 9-year-old child. Just its existence is enough to threaten them," Robin replied without hesitation. "You?" Hina became instantly angry. "An 8 or 9-year-old child?" Saitama asked curiously. "Well, Saitama, Vice Admiral. Nico Robin reportedly fought against the Marines in her childhood, destroying 6 Marine warships, which is why she is wanted as the offspring of demons," Toshigi explained. "Of course, the world government wouldn't admit that we are afraid of Robin exposing their history and that's why they want to capture her. Instead, they gave a nominal excuse. Of course, even the people in the Marines probably consider this excuse to be true by now. Alright, Marine Saitama, what exactly are you here for in the Goa Kingdom?" Uchiha Madara interrupted. "I'm here to make a deal with you," Saitama confidently said. "Let's discuss how to get the Marine soldiers back." "Oh?" Uchiha Madara narrowed his eyes. "Come, let's talk in the room." The Goa Kingdom's palace has now been converted into the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army. Of course, the overly luxurious decorations were long sold off by Robin, who manages the finances, and a considerable amount of supplies were smuggled in through the Revolutionary Army's ships. And now, Saitama and the others have arrived, naturally bringing them to this place to serve as a meeting room. Marines' discussion about returning the prisoners of war is not difficult to imagine. Admiral Akainu is currently in the prison of the Goa Kingdom, refusing to eat or drink, showing a determination to not eat the food of the Zhou dynasty. The strength of an admiral-level fighter is not something that can be easily sacrificed, no matter where they are. Perhaps the world government can easily gather hundreds of thousands of ordinary Marines. But there are only a few admiral-level fighters. So it was within the expectations of the Revolutionary Army's staff that the Marines would come. Of course, they couldn't have guessed that Saitama would lead the team. But even if it was Saitama leading the team, it didn't matter. After all, it was this group of staff members who would discuss the details. Marine brought a team from the staff headquarters, and it seems that there are also people from the world government. On this side, Robin and the Revolutionary Army staff members appeared. As soon as both sides sat down, they began to argue. Robin said, "The world government wants the hostages back." "Sure, but how about lifting the blockade first?" The world government personnel responded, "The blockade cannot be lifted, it can never be lifted. If you provoke us, we will call the Shicibukai to beat you up." Robin sneered, "Come on, if you dare." Of course, these words were translated by Zhao Shu. Robin and the others wouldn't be so straightforward. Among various insinuations, threats, compromises, and firmness, Saitama and Uchiha Madara sat calmly on both sides. Although most of the work was done by the people below, they were officially in charge of the hostage exchange. Returning the hostages was a must, whether it was the world government or the Revolutionary Army, they both had their desires. The world government hoped to return Admiral Akainu and the Marine soldiers recently captured by Uchiha Madara. The Revolutionary Army also hoped to use these bargaining chips to exchange for certain freedom for the Goa Kingdom, to avoid being blocked by the world government and to obtain the right to free trade. After all, although the Goa Kingdom is not small, it is impossible for the island to meet all the needs of its people. They need to import from the outside and sell their own advantageous products to make a profit. The blockade of the Goa Kingdom by the world government for a short time is not a big deal, but in the long run, it is definitely unsustainable. Relying solely on the Revolutionary Army's smuggling at night cannot maintain the peace of the entire country. And this is also the most valuable bargaining chip for the world government, and if possible, they definitely don't want to use it. They want to completely seal off the Goa Kingdom, trap the Revolutionary Army and suffocate them here. Neither side is willing to compromise their trump cards, so the meeting has been going on for a long time without progress. And at this moment, Saitama and Uchiha Madara glanced at each other, and a faint purple light flashed in Saitama's eyes. Their gazes froze, as if they both lost consciousness for a second. Then, in the next second, they regained their clarity. The next second, Uchiha Madara suddenly spoke up. "Enough." Uchiha Madara calmly spoke. His voice was not loud, but in an instant, it drew everyone's attention. We will release the captive Akainu, along with some soldiers captured during this period. However, we demand that the world government lift the blockade on the Goa Kingdom and sign a fair trade and exchange agreement with our revolutionary army, granting us the same status as non-aligned countries. This is our demand, and it is also our bottom line. If you agree, we can sign the contract. If you don't, then you can leave. Upon hearing this, the crowd reacted with surprise. Even Robin widened her eyes. In fact, what Uchiha Madara said was the goal of the revolutionary army. But is this goal easily achievable? How is that possible? Would the world government agree so easily? If they don't agree, why would we keep these prisoners and waste food? Robin was going crazy. Does he even know that now is not the time to be stubborn? Robin cursed in her heart, a hint of urgency in her eyes. It is normal for negotiations to fail. In fact, the demands Robin made were even higher than Uchiha Madara's demands. After all, asking for is one thing, but actually getting the money is another. She had long anticipated that the world government would reject her demands and then use that as an opportunity to propose a lower-level demand. But what the hell is this? If you don't agree, then you can leave now. Once communication is truly cut off, what will happen to the prisoners? What will happen to the blocked Goa Kingdom? Compared to Robin's anxiety, the officials of the world government had a difficult expression on their faces. Damn it. Why did this Uchiha Madara happen to press on the bottom line that the world government entrusted to us? As negotiators, they naturally needed to strive for the maximum advantage for the world government. There is a bottom line, but that is just a bottom line, a limit. They absolutely have to keep everything within that bottom line in order to report back. Uchiha Madara's conditions happened to press tightly against the world government's bottom line, leaving no room for negotiation. Could it be that there is a mole among us? Who leaked our bottom line to the revolutionary army? The negotiators of the world government glanced at each other, thinking in their hearts. But that shouldn't be the case. Only the negotiators sent by the world government knew our bottom line, and there were only a few of them. How could they betray themselves? What does the revolutionary army have to bribe them with? Of course, there is also Saitama Vice Admiral, who is in charge. But Saitama Vice Admiral knows the bottom line, and when he is about to come ashore, he doesn't have time to leak anything. In an instant, the negotiators fell into confusion. A person hesitated for a moment and finally pretended to say, "We absolutely cannot agree to this condition of yours." "Oh, then you don't have to say it, please leave." Uchiha Madara reached out his hand and said, "You can go now." Negotiator. Leave? Akainu is still in prison, how can we leave? But looking at Uchiha Madara's outstretched hand, everyone looked at each other. What should we do? If we really leave, won't the Marines tear us apart? The key is that if Uchiha Madara proposes a condition that everyone cannot agree to, it would be fine, but unfortunately, the condition is within the acceptable range. Damn it. If I find out who leaked our bottom line, then. They had no idea that the one who leaked the bottom line was their own person sitting next to them with a silly expression on his face, drinking tea, Saitama. The communication between Zhao Shu's main body and his clone is not that convenient. At least, it is not easy for the main body to inform the clone of any news. But that's only the case when they are not close. Once they are close, as long as they see each other's eyes and use Tsukuyomi, an unknown illusionary world will appear before the other person's eyes. In this world, all factors, including time, location, quality, and geography, are controlled by the caster. Time can be stretched from an instant to 3 days. What else can't be solved? The result is the fate of these negotiators. Facing an opponent who knows their bottom line, no matter what moves they make, it's useless. Cough. Can't we discuss this? Robin coughed, timely giving the world government a way out. Well, you're right, we should discuss it. The world government personnel coughed and accepted the way out without changing their expression. In fact, there is nothing to discuss. The Goa Kingdom can almost be said to have been conquered by Uchiha Madara alone, and he also withstood the attacks from the Marines alone. It is absolutely impossible for the revolutionary army to undermine Uchiha Madara at this time. Although the conditions imposed by the Marines are harsh, they are still within the acceptable range, and they are conditions that they can agree to. Although the successful transaction will not earn the world government's reward by lowering the conditions, at least they will not be punished for it. So, the transaction ended smoothly. Both sides were satisfied. After all, everyone had completed their own tasks. Then the officials of the world government naturally and without hesitation requested to visit Admiral Akainu, and the revolutionary army agreed. In the dim dungeon, Akainu had one empty arm and the other was handcuffed with sea stone. He was very thin, with dry and peeling lips, but his eyes still carried a hint of arrogance. Although this guy had been playing the trick of not eating the food of the Zhou dynasty, he didn't even drink the water given by the Revolutionary Army. But relying on Admiral's strong physique, he persisted, not to mention dying, he never gave up on escaping. His eyes were full of determination, looking like he would continue to escape if the people from the world government didn't come. Even with the sea stone handcuffs, the difficulty of escaping was astonishing. When he was led out of the prison by the people from the world government, the sunlight that came into his eyes made him squint, and then he saw the people from the Marines. Saitama. I made you laugh. Akainu's voice was hoarse, obviously he hadn't replenished his water for a long time. When Akainu's eyes swept over a figure, they instantly filled with anger. Uchiha Madara. The erupting anger was like a volcano about to erupt. The fury in Akainu's eyes, if materialized, would definitely be much hotter than the temperature of flames. The officials of the world government's faces changed. The conditions they had finally negotiated, what if Akainu did something here again? It's not surprising that the Revolutionary Army would blame the world government, it's the world government's problem. However, contrary to their expectations, Akainu did not rush out recklessly. Instead, he took a deep breath and closed his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, they had regained their calmness. One day, I will arrest you, he said coldly. To this, Uchiha Madara just snorted disdainfully. It was Robin who immediately seized the opportunity and turned to the officials of the world government, saying, if I remember correctly, we have already signed a treaty. What does this mean? Misunderstanding. Admiral Akainu has just come out and may not be fully aware of the current situation, the world government official immediately reassured. In fact, both Robin and the world government officials knew one thing. This treaty was only created because neither side wanted to go to war at the moment. The world government was unable to mobilize the Shichibukai in a short period of time, and their own fighting power had been greatly depleted, making it difficult for them to take action. As for the Revolutionary Army, they were still in the early stages of development and took advantage of this opportunity to recuperate and cultivate new members. Both sides did not want to fight, and that's why they ended up with the current situation. As for that agreement, it has existed solely to be torn apart since its inception. So Akainu didn't care when he heard it. He snorted coldly and turned and left. It was Uchiha Madara who suddenly spoke up, is the transaction over? Yes, the world government official said with a smile, we should also leave. Leave? Uchiha Madara suddenly said, are you sure you want to leave? Why? Is there something wrong? Saitama asked with a smile. Nothing. Uchiha Madara's face turned cold. I just wanted to ask if you want to redeem other prisoners. Other prisoners? Everyone looked at each other in surprise. They are the Marine soldiers who were captured together with Akainu, and there are a few vice admirals among them. Uchiha Madara said calmly, don't you want to redeem them? They are still alive? Everyone was shocked to hear this. Back then, when Akainu, Sengoku, and others launched their attack, it wasn't just the few of them who were targeted. There were 10 vice admirals and countless elite members in the fleet. You should know that this group of people originally intended to fight against the Revolutionary Army. They were filled with elites and could be considered the backbone of the future Marines. Perhaps a few more vice admirals could have emerged in the future. However, they were ultimately sucked into huge meteorites by Uchiha Madara's planetary devastation, and those meteorites are still floating above the coastline of Goa Kingdom. This is also one of the reasons why even the resolute Sengoku appeared somewhat despondent. The backbone of the Marines was broken, but now. They're not dead? They're still alive? Still alive, Uchiha Madara nodded. Are you going to redeem them? Planetary devastation is actually not a lethal ninjutsu, it is just a sealing technique. Sealing techniques are meant for sealing, not killing. Kaguya spent thousands of years in planetary devastation and came out alive and kicking, which shows that it is not lethal in general. Of course, Kaguya has a special bloodline and extraordinary strength, possessing a true immortality that is completely different from the usual. But now those soldiers haven't been sealed for long, they are in a sealed state and unable to move, but because of this, even hunger will be alleviated. The physical fitness of the people in the pirate world is also quite good. Akainu resisted for nearly a month and is still alive, even planning multiple escapes. Although ordinary soldiers do not have the physical fitness of Akainu, they are unable to move and cannot expend energy, so there should be quite a few survivors. They are still alive? The officials of the world government exchanged glances with a forgiving expression. Including Sengoku, they all thought that those people had long since died. If this group of elite Marines is still alive, we need to report to the world government immediately, the official said with a serious expression. This matter has exceeded their decision-making scope. Okay, Uchiha Madara nodded. The officials quickly reported, and the Den Den Mushi connected directly to the 5 elders. The decision of the 5 elders was also swift: at all costs, save these soldiers. Then came a series of verbal battles. The people of the world government wanted to take advantage of the fact that they are all soldiers, and they are all included in the contract we discussed before. But Robin and the others had already known this news and had already stated it in the previous treaty, specifically mentioning Akainu and the soldiers who recently violated the territorial waters. As a result, the people of the world government could only sign a series of treaties that betrayed their country, pay a large sum of money, and redeem these people. Then Uchiha Madara naturally released planetary devastation, and countless marines fell like rain, and in the end, the warships that had been absorbed also fell. Those warships ultimately belonged to the Revolutionary Army. They only returned the prisoners, not the warships. These warships will become important assets for the Revolutionary Army. After the transaction was completed, Saitama walked back with a dumbfounded smile on his face. This time, he was only a nominal leader. Looking at the departing marines, Robin hesitated for a moment and asked, "Mr. Madara, is it okay for us to let them go like this? These soldiers are all elite marines, and we just let them go like this." The world government offered a large amount of ransom. But the reason why the ransom is so high is because the marine soldiers are important. If we only consider this, just these marines, along with Sengoku and others who have recovered from their injuries, can immediately recreate the military force that besieged the Goa kingdom that day. Really? Is it okay? No problem, Uchiha Madara said calmly. As for you, with such a large sum of money coming in, how much can you improve the economic situation of the Goa kingdom? It's up to you. And when will the school I mentioned earlier open?